footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you our FBS Game of the Week preview between the UCF Knights and the South Carolina Gamecocks. Now let's take a look at some keys to victory for both teams, starting with UCF.
Central Florida has one of the more efficient offenses in the country. They move the ball very well, and they play with great tempo. This week, however, versus South Carolina, execution is far more important than flash. They're going to have to execute each and every series they got the football versus the Gamecocks. And defensively, they must be able to clamp down in the red zone, and their safeties can't get caught looking in the backfield. Otherwise, Connor Shaw can hit them for big plays deep down the field. They're going to have to stay disciplined in their coverage responsibilities. Now let's move over to South Carolina in this ball game, and consistency in the passing game is needed. Now, while Connor Shaw has been productive, he's been erratic, and I personally think Dylan Thompson is a much more consistent passer, and I would go with him more so than Connor Shaw. Now, defensively, I love the intensity that the Gamecocks play with, but this week they must be careful because being too aggressive versus UCF could lead to you being out of position, and you don't want that versus the Knights. You want to stay gap disciplined versus the run, as Bortles is a mobile quarterback and Storm Johnson is a guy that has the speed to take it the distance. Now, here are some coaching points for both teams in this ball game. For UCF, the offensive efficiency has to be excellent. They've already done a great job so far this season being efficient, but this week versus South Carolina, different animal, you have to be excellent. And you want to close the door on Connor Shaw. Keep him contained, tackle to tackle. Make sure your pressure, if you blitz, comes from the A and B gap. You want to play that C gap with contain, and that's how you essentially keep him bottled up in the pocket. Now, for South Carolina, the first quarter sets the tempo. You have to come out firing on all cylinders on the road versus a very tough team in UCF. You can't come out flat, otherwise you're going to find yourself beat. And the alley defender versus the run will be key. He's going to have to step in and field versus the running game, whether it be from Bortles or from Storm Johnson. You have to get these guys at the line of scrimmage, and no missed tackles. Like I said, UCF is an efficient offense. They run a lot of short passes, a lot of quick passes. You have to make those tackles, those one-on-one opportunities in space. The X factor for South Carolina will be their quarterback play, whether it's Connor Shaw or Dylan Thompson. They have to be consistent, they have to be accurate, they have to be efficient throughout the course of the ballgame. If they can do that, South Carolina can beat anybody in the country. The X factor for Central Florida will be their wide receivers. They can't have a bad case of the dropsies versus South Carolina. It's important for the Knights to stay on the field and stay ahead of the chains, so those receivers have to catch each and every pass thrown their way. Now, here are some 2014 draft prospects you want to keep an eye on in this ball game. For Central Florida, their quarterback Blake Bortles has had an impressive start to the season. Keep an eye on him moving forward. 6'4", 227 pounds. Storm Johnson is a guy that's definitely a game breaker in the backfield, that has that speed to take the distance, can also catch the football out of the backfield. And on defense, E.J. Dunston, outstanding guy in the middle, 6'2", 310-pound senior. And look out for guard Jordan McCray. His brother plays on the team as well along that offensive line. Here's a guy that's 6'4", 309, very impressive prospect. And for South Carolina, we covered these guys before. Their defensive line, in my opinion, is star-studded, led by Jadeveon Clowney. It'll be interesting to see if they move him around the defense this week versus Central Florida. Chaz Sutton is an outstanding defensive end opposite of Clowney. And I also like what they bring to the table on the interior with Kelsey Quarles. Keep an eye on him, 6'4", 298 pounds. And in the secondary, two solid cornerback prospects in Victor Hampton and Jimmy Legree. And a guard on offense, A.J. Cann, has had a very productive season so far, 6'4", 310 pounds. George Rogers is not only a Gamecock legend, but a college football legend. Played there from 1977 to 1980, and in 1980, he won the Heisman Trophy. He rushed for over 5,200 yards in his career, which is first all-time, and also finished his Gamecock career as a two-time All-American. In only 2 years, Marquette Smith left his impact on that UCF Knights program, a guy that finished with over 2,500 yards in his career and was the first Knight running back to rush for back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and was a consensus All-American in 1995. I like UCF in this ball game. I think this is a well-balanced football team. They can run the ball very well with Storm Johnson. They do a great job defensively getting you off the field. And when you look at the quarterback play, I think that's the biggest difference. They have the better quarterback out of the three guys that's going to be in this ball game. Dylan Thompson, Connor Shaw, and Bortles. So I would take Bortles over the two guys from South Carolina, and quarterback play is what you need to win in college football. I love what they bring to the table, and don't sleep on their offensive line. Very underrated group. So I like the UCF Knights to knock off South Carolina at home.